Yes. Hello. Can we live?
I thought it was a very short show because what we're going to talk about today, people are like, wow, 6.3, very good number, very happy. So we can all go home. Done.
No.
No.
Actually, there's much more than that.
Okay.
So
Special edition.
It's a special edition. Today, we are just going to be talking. By the way, welcome back. Today, we're just going to be talking about EPF's dividends, 6.3%. I think everybody is talking about it. Every Malaysian I know is talking about it.
I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, and that's right, because it's EPF's best dividend since 2017. Ken.
Correct.
And everyone is celebrating, but beyond the celebration,
Everyone's celebrating.
I'm celebrating.
Yeah.
There's also a deeper story here, right?
Yes.
There's actually, we can go into detail because it's really, to me, it's really, really quite interesting, and you can take away quite a few things from this 6.3% dividends and what we will be talking about, and things that you can do for your own portfolio. So, welcome back everyone to In Your Best Interest Malaysia. My name is Imran. I am the financial writer here at Stashaway. And if you've read any of the weekly buzz that we send out every Friday, that's by yours truly. And Ken.
And I'm Ken, the country manager of Malaysia. To those of you who are fasting, selamat berpuasa. And I know we are about less than 2 hours before buka puasa, so selamat berbuka as well.
Thank you for joining us, guys. And if you are excited about the 6.3% dividend, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Please feel free.
Let's see some flames
Yeah,
in
let's
the
see
chat.
flames. Yo, let's go EPF. Yeah, let us know what you think in chat. And if you have any questions for Ken or myself, we are watching the chat as well.
Yeah.
So please go ahead and put it down there. So
Disclaimer.
Ken.
Disclaimer.
Oh my God! Thank you.
Legal disclaimer.
I almost forgot our legal disclaimer. Please don't take this as financial advice. We are just talking about what it means, the things that are happening in the markets and the things that are affecting Malaysians.
Yeah.
And then we just want to talk about it, and in the context of investment and
For information and education.
yeah, and entertainment
And
purposes
entertainment only, yes.
So now, thank you for that, Ken. And now we can get into it, because this 6.3% dividend, I've seen it a lot on social media. I think every outlet is talking about it, and it's generated a lot of buzz. But let's put this into a little bit of perspective, because when you see 6.3%, is it good? Is it bad? In what sense, right? In a historical context? What about if you look at asset classes, different asset classes, right? Maybe the S&P 500, for example. So can you frame this a little bit for us?
Yeah. 6.3 is great.
Okay,
Buka puasa already.
Buka puasa, yes.
So yes, 6.3 I think is a really good result, right?
Okay.
And I think there's a few ways to justify why that's a good result.
Yeah.
If you look at it last year did 5.5, this year it did 6.3, and I think that is the feeling that everyone is riding on, right? Better than last year.
Better than last
we all
year.
like improving in life, but that's not how investment performance
0.8%
works.
better than higher.
Exactly. And best since 2017. In
Yes.
2017, the EPF returned 6.9%. So this is actually in the ballpark of that, very good. And if you take a 10-year average, the 10-year average is 5.9. So this 6.3 is bigger than 5.9.
Yes.
But I think what is more important actually is the wider context around how great it is for these returns to be obviously positive and stable at that 5 to 6% mark, at least around the last 10 years. You shouldn't take it for granted, because if you have any experience investing, you know that volatility exists in single stocks and in markets.
Yeah.
So the fact that it can consistently deliver returns,
And you said it was around average 5.9% for the past 10 years, right?
yeah, average positive returns of around 5 to 6% is the big takeaway here. And the second thing around that, in terms of a wider context, is you should judge the return based on the market conditions. As an investment, institutional investor, what surrounds this return is the markets. So if you look at last year, we had a very good year, both domestically and abroad. So 6.3%, I would say, is in line with some of the performance from these indices. But I will also say that if you look at some bad years, let's say if you look at 2022, where the S&P was down, I think in bear market territory, the EPF still delivered 5.35%.
I think in 2022, like even all the asset classes were
Yeah,
down.
bonds
like, even
were down
bonds were down
20%.
as well. Like,
So the EPF did 5.35 in a very difficult year. And if we were in 2022, I would say 5.3 is a great result given the markets.
Right.
Not as good as 6.3, obviously, but 5.3 is also very good given the
So-
markets.
yeah, so we were looking at a little bit into the EPF's historical performance, and it kind of tracks to the greater
correlates with-
correlated with the global markets, right? We're not just talking about Malaysia's markets as well, right? But here's the thing, because if we want to look at historical performance, some people might say, look at S&P last year. S&P 500 was up 24% last year.
Yeah.
And if you say, okay, that's one thing, that's S&P 500, that's US stocks, even gold, which is considered to be safe, right?
Yeah.
That was up 27% last year, right? So how do you frame that in this
Yeah.
context, right?
I mean, you should at least know what other asset classes or investments have done,
Yeah.
right? Cash is around 3%, you know, S&P, like you said, around 24%, NASDAQ did very well, gold did very well. So I think the point about all this is not to compare them like for like and then say like, oh, I would then like rush and put all my money in this or put my money in that, right? I think it's about benchmarking where the returns stand, and that informs you of what you do with the rest of your money. Whether you like it or not, a big portion of your investments is going into the EPF after your salary.
Right.
And by the end of your career, when you retire, you will have a big sum there.
Yes.
And that's why you should care about the 6.3% or the 5%. But you cannot compare head to head, but rather, what does it mean for what you do with your other investments?
Right.
Does that mean that, oh, okay, I understand how EPF invests my money. Should I now then consider investing in gold, in S&P,
Yes.
in the local markets, in single stocks, in cryptocurrencies?
And I think that maybe that's the way you can think about it. It's where EPF, your retirement account, it's one part of your greater.
Yeah, a very core part
It's
of
a
your
very
investment
core part.
portfolio.
Yeah, but it's just one part, and then you can do more than that, right? And you can, well, we'll get into it because it's quite exciting. Because let's talk about, 6.3%, great number,
Yeah.
and then we were talking about it in a historical context. But how do you achieve that 6.3% return?
With great skill. That's
With great skill and management.
Yes.
And diversification.
Yes, true.
Because, yeah, let's talk about it, Ken, because
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting where you can actually go and see how EPF invests Malaysians' retirement money, where EPF invests it, what assets, right? So, Ken, I think you have some numbers here to give.
Yeah, I have some breakdown for you. I think the first thing to look out for when you read the news or you read the statements put out by EPF, and you can do it as an exercise this year or future instances as well, the thing to look out for is the word asset allocation. That's basically how they split their portfolio. So from a portfolio perspective, they invest 46% in bonds or fixed income, or 42% in equities or stock. So what does this mean, right? 46% and 42, that basically represents a very balanced portfolio.
Yep.
Essentially 50-50 in equal split between bonds and equities. And that makes sense because you are positioning yourselves for retirement. And the EPF is
Yeah.
managing that money for us. So it makes sense that it's 50-50.
I think that's an important point also, because when you talk about asset allocation in the context of this is for people's retirement,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you can again, it's not apple to apple comparison when you talk about S&P 500
Yeah.
or you talk about gold, right?
Yeah.
It's about having that full portfolio with bonds as well.
Yeah.
So-
So if we go a little bit deeper, so you understand now how it's split according to the overall asset allocation. But one thing that is worth noting is how much EPF invests overseas and how much invests domestically, locally.
Yeah,
So
this one's fun.
the overseas portion of their asset allocation is 37%. So EPF invests 37% of the portfolio overseas. And their overseas portfolio contributed 50% to the investment income last year, 2024. The local portion, which is the remainder, 63%, also gave back around 50%
Okay,
investment
okay.
income. So it's notable that the overseas investments,
Return.
which is smaller than the domestic investors, return the equal amount, right? So it disproportionately contributes to the investment income. So, and that's to be expected because overseas investments have better risk return. You mentioned the S&P, you mentioned NASDAQ. Of course, these are major markets that you would think that they have exposure to. So if you invest overseas for yourself as well, similar to institutional, sophisticated, smart investors like EPF, you could also unlock or realize some of the benefits of diversifying overseas.
Okay, but here's the thing, because we were talking about this earlier. We prep our shows. Okay,
You mean this is not all?
we don't go off the cuff entirely.
Yeah.
So we prep the show, and when we talk about it, I think one thing we found really interesting as well. So you say that international investments do better. There's that greater risk reward potential there as well. But also, when you look at the asset allocation, you look at asset allocation for the domestic. So domestically, EPF invests 63% of their overall portfolio, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: 68% of that 63% is in bonds.
Yes.
It's in fixed income.
Yeah.
So naturally, you would expect a slightly lower return coming from that domestic element, right?
Yeah.
But this does not disprove the previous point, where sometimes when you are looking internationally for that greater risk returns.
Yeah.
But also, here's the point I want to make: it's that asset allocation, right? It's that diversification. It's also important, right?
Yeah.
I think that's so fun, and you can see that really EPF does the same, right? EPF diversifies, EPF invests internationally.
So overseas,
Yeah.
the EPF invest, last year they invested 37% of the portfolio overseas. And I got some asset allocation numbers for these, for the overseas portfolio for 2023, the previous year. But asset allocation, especially on a strategic level, doesn't change that often. So this also reflects maybe how they got some of the investment returns last year. So in 2023, of their overseas investments, 74% was in equities. So naturally, to complement what you said just now, they derive risk and therefore return from their overseas exposure.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because when they invest domestically, it's for stability in terms of capital preservation and some interest income from bonds. But when they invest overseas, is to get better risk return and more allocation towards equity. So just to highlight the numbers again, so you can sum it up. 37% invested overseas, 63% invested locally. Of the 37% overseas, around 74% is in equities, and domestically, around 80% is in bonds or cash. So you can see that locally, that's where they are conservative and they don't take a lot of risk. Overseas, that's really where they take more risks and therefore get more returns.
Wow, that's, honestly, I find that very cool, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to go to the comments a little bit. Hi to Z Vendor Yao. Hi Z. And this is my favorite comment, Ken. Fuzzy Senuva says, "Nice haircut, Imran."
Well,
Ken,
you got some fans.
you didn't mention my haircut the whole day.
I noticed it,
But you noticed it.
but I didn't compliment it. But is it too late to say that? What a nice haircut. I agree
No,
with Fuzzy that it is a nice haircut.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Are you happy now?
I am. Thank you.
Okay.
So, talking about asset allocation, diversification, and international exposure. So that's what EPF does.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we can do that as well, right?
Yes,
I think that's
yes.
what's really exciting. So let's go on and talk about it, because it's one thing to talk about EPF 6.3%, but what can you really do about it now? What more can you do about it? You can actually approach it in a similar way. In fact, you can look at EPF's way of investing and that international exposure, etc. You can see that as your own template, actually, right? If it comes to for retirement planning,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk a little bit about that, Ken. What can you do about it as an investor?
Yeah. I think every year when EPF announces its dividend, it's a really good time to take stock of where you stand with regards to your retirement. How many of you have an idea of how much you actually have in your EPF right now, right?
I do.
You do? Okay. Maybe you were prepping for the
Yeah.
meeting and you were looking at the 6.3 and you log into the KWSPI account, which is a really good app, by the way. I love that app, KWSPI account. Download it now if you even have a single ringgit in EPF, use it. It's a great app. How much of you actually know how much you have inside? That's very important, because that determines how you build towards your retirement. And have you even asked yourself that question of, what is my retirement number? How much do I want and need for my retirement? For example, the EPF came out with several tiers very recently, and they put the enhanced tier at 1.3 million. Sounds like a lot of money, and they call it enhanced, which sounds like it's gold class or first class already. But actually, if you break it down per month, that's only 5K. And I'm not trying to be insensitive, but 5K for a certain a person, for let's say, if you're a CEO or if you're a high-flying executive, or if you have your own business and you derive a lot of income from it, 5K is something a fresh grad, let's say, who comes back from overseas, would expect from a job, if not first year, second year.
So yeah, probably not first year.
Yeah, but let's say you get a really good job.
Yeah,
possible, wherever, right? It's possible, right? So what makes you think at 55 or 60 that you would be happy with a first job salary?
Let me clarify that. So that 5K is based on so it's per month for how many years?
If you draw down for 20 years.
Okay. Yeah, so you draw down 1.3 million.
Yeah, over
for 20 years. Every month you
get 5K.
You draw down 5K. Okay.
Yeah, and 5K doesn't really make sense for someone who has a high flying career, and then they let's say just before they retire, let's say they're making 50,000. Right? If you're oil and gas executive, if you're a tech executive, 50,000 maybe sounds like a lot of money to us, but there's people who are on that. And what makes you think that they would want to retire with 5K?
It would be like a massive lifestyle
10x decrease, right? Like how are you going to expect that? So I think you need to ask yourself honestly, what is your retirement number?
Okay. Yeah.
And let's say you want to draw 10K a month for 20 years. That would mean that you need 2.4 mil in your retirement nest egg. And let's say 1.3 comes from EPF. That additional 1.1 can come from elsewhere.
I see.
And I think it's not presumptuous to say that you can also invest in parallel outside the EPF system.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And even use or have StashAway enable this for you.
Yep.
You can use StashAway to invest alongside your EPF and build towards your retirement using our platform.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons to me, that's one of the big reasons why we are here, right? It's to enable that ease of access, right? I mean, to me, so what I've done is I have a general investing portfolio, right? And I set that up for the long term, right? I set that up indefinitely, right? Until my retirement. And because when I have my money there, I know it's invested in exactly what we talked about earlier. It's invested in foreign assets, foreign markets, global markets, right? And I think you want that access to that higher risk return potential, right? Beyond your retirement savings as well, to achieve exactly what you're saying, right? Beyond that 1.3 million, right?
Yeah, and I think that the EPF system is really good because it does a few things. The first thing is that you can't access it really until you are about to retire. So that lack of temptation is very important. It takes out impulse control, entirely. And secondly, it is the fact that you deliver very stable and positive returns.
I think that's a very powerful factor there.
And third, you contribute to it every month. So that it has long-term dollar cost averaging and decent returns all wrapped into one. Perfect. And it's done in a system so that you are incentivized to do so, and there are rules if you take out your money. So actually, if you practice this in real life, although more difficult because there's no one to stop you from
Yeah.
from breaking the fund, right? You can also do this alongside the EPF system.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, right?
So something like where, in fact, that's a great way that you framed it, because I suppose that's what I'm doing, or probably many of you out there are doing as well with like their statutory portfolios, right?
Yeah.
You have that automatic transfer,
Yeah.
right? Automatic deposit into something like a diversified portfolio like general investing. But what if I wanted to touch that portfolio?
Cannot.
Just cannot.
Sorry, that was a bit forceful, but it should be forceful because you shouldn't.
Yeah,
shouldn't
so
touch-
I suppose that's the difference there, and also that ability to adjust your risk and return, right?
Yeah.
With something.
Before we go, I just also wanted
Yeah.
to say, with regards to our statutory general investing portfolio, our 36% risk index portfolio delivered 11.6% returns. So, if you know that, now that we have gone down this rabbit hole, since EPF has delivered 6.3% return, and you know the asset allocation is around equal parts, right? Say 50-50 as in terms of equities and bonds. Some overseas, some local. If you look at how we invest and the returns that the statutory risk index 36% portfolio has given you, you can see that the risk return is commensurate, right? Last year that portfolio did 11.6%. So you have the SRI 36% portfolio here, you have your EPF portfolio which gives you 6.3%. So I think it really complements each other because you are actively or deliberately choosing to take more risk, knowing that EPF is managing your money well and is managing your money in a balanced way.
Right.
So if you are young,
Right.
you have excess money to invest, and you have a decent risk-taking appetite. You know, because I would say that our SRI 36% portfolio also is not as risky as some of the benchmarks out
they
there.
are risky.
S&P 500, Nasdaq, Bitcoin, right? It's still a very diversified portfolio.
Yes.
Different sectors, some different asset classes in there as well. Still delivers superior returns, right? And so it should, because it's also taking more risk.
Yeah.
So I think EPF is doing a great, in summation, I think EPF is doing a great job managing our money for the long term. Recognize how important it is for your eventual retirement, but know that there's something you can learn from this. Look at the smart money. They are investing overseas. They are getting more exposure to equities overseas. If you're young, you're working in a job that is stable, you can put more money aside to set yourself up better for retirement. 1.3 is great, right? Let's not belittle that.
6.3.
I mean, 1.3 million in terms of a nest egg is really good. But what if you want 5 million? We were talking just now and I asked you what's your retirement number. You want 5 million, right?
Actually, I want 10 million.
You want 10 million. You want 10 million, right? Okay, so 10 million is something that you for your retirement nest egg,
Yeah,
right?
how would you achieve that, right? You need to put in that little,
Consciously, yes.
Yeah, consciously take on a little bit more of that risk, right, to achieve something like that. And I think it's perfectly what you say. It's complementary. You know, it's investing beyond the EPF as well, right, and side by side as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great summation there.
Yep. What are we going to talk about next week? I don't know. Like, there's so much news to cover these days.
Something
If not
about
DeepSeek or if
something
not-
about tariffs.
Oh,
I
tariffs,
don't know.
Is it Bitcoin?
Is it Trump?
Is it Trump? Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Right now, the news cycle is pretty crazy. Things happen every day. So I don't know what we'll be talking about next week, Ken. But what I do know is that we will be talking next week. So we'll catch you next week, same time and same place, YouTube and Instagram Live. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you.
Bye.